Now then, welcome back to Drift Spot. Today I am starting my D5MR build. Now you might see a lot of posts about these appearing. It's 3 Racing's new chassis compared to obviously the D5S, which is rear engined or rear motored. This one is mid. That's got a lot of people excited who drive on things like carpet, because generally the D5 having the motor out back tends to swing like a pendulum. It changes the way it grips up, and people are quite excited about the MR because if they drive on carpet a lot, generally that chassis should be a little bit more suited, a little bit more of a YD2 competitor, but we'll see about that. So I bought another chassis. I bought the MR because I've obviously got the D5 in the S, and I wanted that car to be kind of a resin car, a P-Tile car to go to local places like NRD and Slidehouse, and I'm kind of building that up and upgrading that as we go. So it's just got a new Toro ESC, and I've just got the D50 Power HD servo, and I'm probably going to get the Yokomo V4 gyro for that, just to finish that off, so it's really nicely done and really nicely kitted out. So I kind of had all of the spares from this car, which was a really nicely driving car and a really capable car anyway, and I thought, right, well, I'll just get another chassis and build another one. Will I keep it at the end? I'm not sure. I guess that depends on how it drives and whether I like it on carpet and whether I really enjoy it. Obviously, Drift Spot, we meet in Lincoln, and we drive on carpet 2 to 3 times a month. So if it suits the carpet more than the D5S, then I guess I might keep it. If I find that actually I still prefer the kit of the D5S, then I'll probably sell it on. But it's a nice thing to do, to buy it and build it and have a go with it and see what it's like, and I'm going to take you on the journey. So previously, when I built the D5, I did a time lapse of building it. I'm not going to bother with the time lapse this time, but I am going to take you through any sort of things that I think when I build the MR is different to the S in the build. So if I find anything random along the way, I'll tell you about the differences between the 2 kits, and then at the end we'll give it a go driving it and give it a review of the differences between the 2. So it's kind of an under the shell D5MR. But so far I am up to bag number 3. If you were going to buy this because you like building kits, because you like sort of adult Lego, so to speak, and you've already built a D5, then actually it's a pretty similar process, being the same brand. There's so many similar parts, the diff's pretty much identical. It's only when you get to sort of bag 3 that things start to get a little bit different, like the suspension setup's different and things. But other than that, you're pretty much building the same car so far. So I'd probably buy a different brand if that's why you were going to do it. On another front, some of the things I tend to find so far are a little bit sort of cheaper than the D5S. So whereas on the D5, the standoffs are aluminium, on the D5MR, yeah, I need to take that spur off, they're plastic. And some of the other plastics involved in the kit, I don't know, they just feel a little bit cheaper. Now I know I've upgraded my D5S a fair bit. The arms are all the same, but just some of the other plastics just felt that little bit less hardy. They're a bit of a more sort of firmer, brittle feeling plastic. And I just wonder that because the kit's a little bit cheaper, I think it's only about £85, something around there. And the D5 was more like 100, I think, if I remember rightly at the start. I don't know, I just wonder whether they've cut a few corners to make it slightly different. Obviously, both of them, when I bought them, have been the base spec models. They're not the carbon one, they're not anything higher than like the aluminium one or anything like that. But I don't know, I just get the feeling that the D5MR, yeah, some of the plastics do feel a bit cheap. I think that people say that about the S anyway, but just the fact that you're getting plastic bits rather than alloy bits as standard does make me think it's a little cheaper. So far then, so good. I've just got to get on to building this different section now, so that'll be quite interesting, and we'll see how we go at the end of that. So now comes to the main bit that causes a bit of controversy, I think, from what I've seen, is the fact that the drive shafts are different. and the way that the hex goes onto the drive shaft is different. It's not a normal hex for your wheels with a pin going through the stub axle. The stub axle has the chamfers on it, flat spots on it, and the way that that slots onto that, it goes on and obviously holds into position. The weird thing is then, so that's, I can kind of handle that, that's alright. I suppose these plastic tabs might break off eventually and that's going to wear out, that's one concern. The front ones, the little stub axles, are just little pieces of metal like this, look. And the same thing occurs, this piece here goes onto there. Like that. And it spins around and clips in. So if they break off those little tabs, I suppose they should be inside a bearing, so it should stop that, but even so. And then the other weird thing on my kit, I've got to find a part because these bearings go in here, but they have to have a small plastic washer. It's literally, what's that? That is 1mm thick washer. Has to go in there before the bearing. Well, for starters, cutting that little silly tab off there is a pain in the backside because it's so small, without worrying about breaking this. And for second, they're so small, in my kit, one of them is broken off, and is somewhere in all that lot. No idea. So I've now got to hunt out a tiny 1mm spacer because when I got the sprue out the box, it had already been snapped off. So that's not particularly helpful. So I'm less impressed with that part. Again, more plasticky bits. Although the rest of the car is coming together pretty nicely. Everything went together pretty swimmingly. I really like the fact that the servo part here unbolts separately to the rest of the chassis. So to change your servo, it's just 5 nuts there and then the 4 bolts that hold in the servo. On a D5S, you've got to take this whole upper gantry off here, which you've probably got like me, all your electronics attached to, which is a bit of a pain, or certainly loosen it all. And last night I changed my servo by loosening it all and twisting it all to the side, but it wasn't particularly easy to get that servo out of there. So, if you had a servo go while you're at a drift event or just going out drifting with your friends, that's a pain because it took me about 20 minutes to change the servo over, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, very painful. So much easier if you have a problem with the D5MR servo change. We'll carry on and we'll see how the plastics fare. And that's it. 1MR built. Thoughts then? There's a couple of things that a lot of people online have spoken about and said that they didn't like, and I would have to agree. So on the hubs, you can see there on the hub is a normal traditional bolt, not a nut. So I showed on the previous video how in the drive shafts the plastic hex piece slots in and connects to the drive shaft itself, and then on here this screws into the actual drive shaft. Rather than having a nut on the other side, so it's a bit of a weird one really. It's something different to pretty much every other RC car, which I find a bit strange that they would do that and that they would change something up without, following the herd. It seems like they've done it because they wanted it to be a different length or needed to be a different size, but they wanted to use the same drive shafts from the D5S, but it didn't quite work. So then they used this sort of cheaper system to me. I think for me, if you're going to go MR and you want mid-motor, I think I would definitely be buying some D5 rear drive shafts. I've seen a friend of mine, Kev, he's on the group and he's on the Instagram as well, building his D5MR. And when he ordered it, the first thing he did was order the rear shafts, the front, what are they called? Stub axles, that's right. Front stub axles and hexes and parts extra on top of his order. So that when he built the car, he just built the car with the normal traditional hubs like you get on these when you've got the normal nuts and pins going through it. So then he could build the car kind of how it should have been. Everything else is absolutely fine. There's a couple of plasticky bits, like these bits here are plasticky, but other than that, it's pretty much a copy of the D5S. Other than the fact you've got rid of the D5S at the front, which seems super bouncy and smooth. That feels kind of a little bit stiffer, but then that's not a fair comparison because it's got racing dampers and things in. And the shell weighs a lot, so I've actually tightened it up quite a lot. But it'd be interesting to see the difference between the two with regards to the IFS, because of course I could go IFS on my D5. I could quite happily do that on the D5S. So I'll be interested to see whether I like that and therefore think, let's give it a go. Because I could 3D print a front brace to go on here and then just give it a go and see if I like it or not. It'd be a shame to lose all the carbony bits and racing bits, but it's not about that, it's about how it drives. So, next bit then, I'm gonna finish putting some electronics on the D5MR, take it down the drift spot, and we'll give it a go, and we'll see how the two handle differently, and whether we think the MR is the way to go or the S is the way to go. I think it'll be down to difference in track, but I think it'll also be down to difference in experience maybe. We'll see. I'll see you at the spot.